Let's welcome John Remo to explain a bit about what he experienced and basically an amazing case study of how he was breached, what happened over there.
Not me personally.
Not
but
you
yes.
personally. Okay, someone else. Okay, John Remo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, here we go. Hi, everyone. I'm John Remo, a former Senior Vice President of Global Infrastructure and Cybersecurity at Warner Music Group, although I recently left to change roles and build my own company. So going to be on the other side of the fence. But as I kick that off, going to take you through what it was like to be in the middle of a breach. It's actually an interesting story. It first started on my birthday. I got a phone call from our head of e-commerce. And I'm like, this is really nice. Like, thank you so much, Angela. And then within about 5 seconds of picking up that phone call, I'm like, this is not the birthday present I wanted. And for the record, I hope none of you have to endure it on your birthday or any other day. But the likelihood is in your role, you will most likely have to deal with a situation similar to this. And for the record, this is not how to handle a breach, response to a breach. This is specifically about the publicly disclosed breach that happened at Warner Music Group several years ago and how managing non-human identities was a core component to that. And if there's any questions, you could find me later. Also, disclaimer, former Warner Music Group disclaimer, I don't know anything about Cardi B, Ed Sheeran, any of that. So please do not ask me. You could find someone else who still works there. Thank you. All right. So what went wrong, right? You get the phone call, something went south. What happened? How do we handle it? Pretty standard. Went through our incident response plan. Boom. Identify the incident being the technical problem that caused the breach. Remediated it. Awesome. That incident was solved. However, the problem very much still remained. We had to answer to a variety of parties, internally and externally, right? So what did we learn as part of this? Well, when we found the culprit, a non-human identity, how did that happen? Whose was it? Where was it? That told us we didn't know what was out there. I believe the stat in the previous talk was 30%. That's probably about right. So here was something out there that no one really knew about that was the keys to the castle that caused this incident, right? So monitoring, we didn't know what was out there. Secondly, there's the lack of actual management. So if we knew what we had, where do we put it? We need to put it in a safe and secure place. That clearly wasn't being done. And then again, you have this thing that's out there that could provide access to unforeseen items is clearly overly permissive. We've all been in the boat of, hey, we try to deploy something, it's not working. Why don't we copy what we have in another account? Maybe it's overly permissive, maybe it's not, but we just want to get it done because we're trying to do the right thing. But at the end of the day, accuracy is much more important over speed. So it's very important to be thoughtful when creating all of these accounts. And then fourth, life cycle. How is this even being managed? When was this account created? What did it exist from? So those are really the 4 core components that came about when this incident happened. But kind of the meta points around them is around unauthorized data access, PII, FII, HIPAA data, all sorts of things, whether it could be, confidential IP as well. Extended breach duration. How long was this going on? Awesome. We solved the incident. It's technically closed. However, there's a whole laundry list of questions, most of which end up of, well, how do you know you found it? How do you know there's nothing else? How do we know the solar exposure? And it goes on and on and on. It doesn't just go on and on and on from your colleagues and counterparts within the organization. You'll have to deal with outside regulatory. You'll have to deal with outside counsel. And outside counsel is more than happy to keep you on the phone for their exorbitant billing rate. So, and you have to answer it. There's really no way out of it. And you'll have to deal with public relations. Point 3. All right. So we saw how non-management of non-human identities was the culprit. How could managing non-human identities actually have helped this? So let's kind of take a step through the 4 points I brought up previously as to what could have been done. The monitoring, right? API keys, secrets, service accounts. There's just a never-ending proliferation of them given where technology is going, integrating with SaaSes, the public cloud, so on and so forth. So preventative measures using something like one of the many, many platforms here today to help govern those accounts is absolutely crucial. There is no way, shape, or form you're going to be able to do this via spreadsheet, via humans, or building your own scripts. It's just not going to scale. And certainly asking for headcount to do it, unless you work in some sort of magic enterprise where you're allowed to get headcount, without getting crucified by the CFO, good luck. So again, that's number one. And again, you look at, this is not an uncommon thing. Warner's not the exception to the rule. Cloudflare, very legit technology company back in 2023 had this same incident happen with an API token gaining access, so on and so forth. Lack of secure credential management, like we talked about. You're not managing, you're not governing it. The identities are free to be taken from any nefarious bad actor should they gain access to your systems, right? So again, putting the time in to define what your best practices are to manage these credentials is absolutely key. But again, it's not really based upon the product, as the gentleman up here before said. It's really up to you. What do you need to do in your businesses, right? All of you come from different backgrounds, verticals. They're all different. I came from music. Let me tell you, there's a lack of standards in music. So it's really whatever you want. But for those who are in financial services, pharma, other industries, there's very clear obligations that you need to make, not just to your internal stakeholders, but your external and regulatory stakeholders. So you really need to take the time and be thoughtful, working with your lines of business and other key stakeholders to identify what those are, document them, find the product that best suits your needs, and work with them. Absence of least privilege enforcement. Again, this is a result generally of people being lazy and taking the easy way out, right? It's much easier to cut and paste something and just get it done. But especially as roles get more complicated, right? Things are being nested, not only within different roles, but to integrate to different applications, different APIs. And it's much easier to create one account that can rule them all, or one account that could manage several services. However, from a blast radius and security perspective, we all know that's a no-no. We also all know we operate in the real world, and humans make mistakes, and humans generally try to take the easy way out. So having an identity management system that governs all of that, that could weed through those nested identities and say, hey, this is duplicative, this is incorrect, this is overly permissive, will help mitigate this risk for you and your organization substantially. And again, OAuth applications had this issue back in 2024, less than a year ago. Moving on. So why it matters so much. And again, a lot of these points are things that, have come up with the previous talks. And again, I think that's really salient, that we're all saying the same thing here. Identity management really, really, really does matter. And if you're not taking the time and effort to think about it and take action upon it, you're putting yourself and your enterprise at risk. So let's talk about it. I think the biggest one here, my personal opinion, is the expanding attack surface area. All of us are in the public cloud. All of us are integrated to SaaSes. All of us are integrated into third parties. And all of those three identities that I mentioned are integrated into numerous other platforms. And that's where the real risk comes up that we're not aware of. It's that under the surface risk of a derivative attack of what's going on with your business partners, third parties. We don't know. They don't have to disclose it, right? So as much as that peer-to-peer relationship is very secure, beyond that, 2 or 3 steps removed is unknown. And that's where the real risk lies. The other risk with the expanding surface area is the fact that it's so easy to make these integrations, right? Anyone in your organization could sign up to a new SaaS and start exfilling data there, intentionally or not, whether it was malintent or not. It's just something that we have to be aware of and is a legitimate threat. And again, how do we govern that? That's where a platform needs to be in place. It's not something the humans can do, let the machines do the work. But again, it goes back to the other theme of you need to decide what your cybersecurity posture is around non-human identity management. Complexity of access controls. Again, I'm kind of hitting on the same key points here. It's just getting more and more complex. You can't do it via spreadsheet. You could try. It's probably not going to work out well. Certainly, if there's a breach, that's going to call into question whether you're incompetent and didn't know, or you knew better and were negligent. Neither one is a good answer. So, if you're on that boat, you could talk to your counsel to see what they say. But you do need something to start to manage these. There's multiple identity platforms out there, whether you have Microsoft and Google and Amazon, so on and so forth. They all have their different sets of permissions, and it makes it extraordinarily challenging to manage and govern them. So having a platform that is able to tie all that together and classify it, make it easy to understand, is certainly the way to go and is a big risk mitigation for your org. Automate, again, just buy the platform. You can't do it yourself, right? You have to get things done quickly. And if you do it the quick and cheap way out, which is just duplicating accounts and not taking the time or thought to actually invest and work with the product to define what your cybersecurity identity posture should be, you're putting yourself at risk. And we all have to work faster. So figure out where you want to be, figure out what product works best for you, and then you will be able to deliver and automate at scale. So you get that nice combination of both accuracy and speed. Regulatory compliance, my personal favorite. You got to do what the law says. It is what it is. This is my personal opinion, a lot of box checking, but I mean, it's also one of the easiest things to do. It's cumbersome, may not be the most cost effective, but again, you know what your regulations are. Counsel should be able to tell you, internal audit should be able to validate it. So you could just go pair it up against whatever platform you find is best for you. Check the box, call it a day, really, because there's no excuse not to do it. You have to do it. Just do it, be done with it. And then reputation and trust, right? So when all the smoke clears, reputation is everything. I believe Lloyd Blankfein, former CEO of Goldman Sachs, said, takes years to build a reputation, seconds to ruin it. 100% true, right? And the other thing to take into account is, well, run cyber, I'm not really in charge. It's not my fault. I'm not the face of the company. When this happens, you're 100% the face of the company. You will have to answer to outside counsel, as I mentioned before, dealing with the PR people of, well, what is the message to the street if you're publicly traded? But the best part about this, from personal experience, is all your best friends in the company, or maybe not your best friends, will bring this up over and over and over again. Say, oh, you said you were secure. We had everything under control. What about last time? What about this? So that's something to take into account, because unless you work in a non-political environment, that's not like Game of Thrones. Again, good for you. But that's not reality. That's something to take into serious account, that people will use it against you. So you want to have all your ducks in a row. So having the platform to manage and govern something like this is absolutely critical. All right, on to the breach FYIs. It's the Italian in me talking like super fast. All right, so I think, again, I talked about a lot of these already. The cost of reimbursement damages, class action lawsuits, like the cost is not the product. I believe, again, person previously said, trying to quantify risk into dollars and cents. For me, that's the only thing that worked at the CEO and the CFO, because you can do the quick math on what it costs for outside counsel and your external incident response to sit on a call, which they were more than happily sit on for their $1,000 bill rates over and over again. And that cost goes through the roof. And these are calls that will continue on most likely for months. Eventually they taper off, but painfully for months. Dealing with communications, it's a waste of time because you have other stuff to do. Just because you're handling a breach doesn't absolve you from all your other day-to-day engineering and operational responsibilities. So this is just an additive thing that you have to deal with. Legal and regulatory, like I said, all that fun stuff, it gets way worse outside the US. We were fortunate this was a US-based incident. US is a lot more friendly to these things than, say, our friends in the European Union. So keep that in mind. The third party and supply chain risk. So this goes back to the problems that can arise, not just from who you directly integrate with, say AWS, but who a partner in AWS integrates with, and their partner and so on. So again, there's only so much you could do from a provenance perspective as to who is accessing your environment. But again, having a non-human identity management tool demonstrates in reality that you are taking all the right steps to secure and protect your enterprise. And finally, the internal and external stakeholder trust, right? The least of the concerns is dealing with the outside world. That's what Corp Comms and PR is for. It's going to be your BFFs in the enterprise. They're continuing to throw daggers at you because of this. So I believe that's all I have. So happy to answer questions if we still have time, since I talk absurdly fast. All right. Go for it.
I am kind of curious about perspective on risk quantification, and
Okay.
what are people using to get good numbers regarding loss?
I don't think there's good numbers. I mean, there's a lot of products out there. My personal opinion is I don't think they're valuable. There's enough data you could out there in Google to say, okay, what is the average cost of a breach? What type of breach happened, to get some metrics there? Okay, what's it going to cost me to do a deal with Entra or Amian or Axiom? I'm sure they'll all make amazing deals, right? And that's where you have to look at it. But it's the underlying cost, which is like the outside counsel stuff. Like when I saw those numbers, it's crazy. Like each one of those lawyers, senior counsel, they're getting $1,200 to $1,500 an hour. There's two of them on a call, plus their associates getting 800 an hour, plus your out incident response people, which whatever your retainer is for them, plus what's going to happen to your cybersecurity insurance premium, which is going to go up or get dropped, but then you're forced to get it anyway. So then you have to pay. I wouldn't buy a tool. It's my honest opinion. You could pull the data. It's readily available, right? But you have the cost to say, look, the opportunity cost through this is $100K a year. The risk of not doing it, that's it. You put it out there. They want to roll the dice. You're good. That way you're not in that negligent, right, or incompetent bucket. You did your best. Business decided not to spend the money. All right. That's on you. Anyone else?
Thank you. So I have a question. I've heard
Sure.
so much today and lived this as well, and maybe you have too. Try and work with DevOps. Let's be their friend. I'm tired of it because as CISOs and CROs and CPOs, we're responsible. So do you feel like in some of these instances that if there was a better accountability, responsibility on DevOps, instead of it being, DevSecOps, it's truly SecDevOps, that we might be able to shift this culture? And two, I do believe legislation is shifting where, as CISOs, right? We've had to sign documents and get corporate board insurance. That's going to start to trickle down, though, to those that are actually developing in the supply chain and things along those ways for accountability. Do you feel that's coming?
I don't quite understand the second part of the question, but let's go to the first part. Everything comes down to accountability. There needs to be a shared responsibility model in that. You can call it whatever you want. Doesn't really make a difference, but it has to be very clear that development, QA, everyone has skin in the game. At the end of the day, if there's an incident, right, it's not about finger pointing. We know where it's going to go. Everyone has to be involved. And that's why I think creating, an SDLC that says, okay, where is everyone's responsibility? There's handholding and the constant code review and the reviews that you're able to do with the non-human identity management platform to say, okay, look, someone hard-coded, a secret or a passcode in there. That's on them. Highlight that. Like, Bob, you got to fix it. You made a mistake. Okay, fine. Fix it. Like, who cares? Like, just fix the issue. Let's move on. We have a business to run. This is not about, shaming Bob.
Fix the issue, but don't release the code. That's the
yeah.
That's
where super clear.
That's where the rubber meets the road, right?
100%. Right, but it stops. Why? Okay. And I think the more it's done, because it's an uncomfortability factor of, you're calling someone out. No one's being called out to be a jerk. We're calling out because it's a risk to the organization. We want to mitigate the risk. Okay, people make mistakes. That is okay. People will continue to make mistakes. What are the governance controls we have in place that are fair, right, to reduce them, right? Does that help answer your question? What's the second one you think regulatory is going to reduce? No, I don't think it should do that. I think if it's a publicly traded company, then I think those whose equity is tied to the share price, whether that's the CEO, CFO, whomever, they're held accountable. Goes back to shared responsibility, right? Are you making the right investments in cyber and tech that these people can do their jobs? I don't know. CFO doesn't give you budget. What are you going to do? You can't miracle yourself. I'm not saying it's easy. You want my opinion? I'm giving my opinion. I think it should not be pushed down to the developers because then people are going to act in a sense of fear and they have to be responsible. And that's, developers code of conduct and handbook. They have to sign that to say, hey, look, if you release bad code, there's a carrot and stick type of action to that. But I think from any legal perspective, unless there's like malicious intent, which I believe is on the books now, which is totally separate than an oopsie, if you will, right? Then, I don't think they should be held accountable, my opinion. All right. Thank you.